What's up, YouTube? This is Pluto Vision here, back with another video. So in this video, I'll be discussing having Pluto in the fifth house of your natal chart. So Pluto represents transformation, death, and rebirth, meaning the ending and beginning of a new cycle. It represents shared resources, deep intimacy, where your own personal power lies, as well as power dynamics likely within intimate connections. It represents the deepest and innermost level of your psychological makeup. Pluto represents anything that's hidden beneath the surface, whether that is emotions, thoughts, physical, tangible items, information, hidden societies, the undercurrents of society, the undercurrents of a situation, hidden motives, anything that is not outwardly and just easily expressed. Pluto does not deal with anything superficial or surface level. Wherever you have Pluto in your chart is likely an area of life where you'll go through extreme highs and lows as well. But these highs and lows are meant to transform you, and the highs and lows also depend on your ability to work with the energy of Pluto or work against it, which will make things very difficult. Right now, the fifth house in your natal chart represents uh, your creativity, your inner child, your hobbies, fun, pleasure, romance, dating, the beginning stages of a relationship before they become serious, casual acquaintances and friends, people that you're not super, you know, close with, um, casual sexual partners, gambling, sudden gains within the cryptocurrency and stock market, and sports, right? So right off the bat, these energies don't really seem like they mix and mesh very well, but that can't be further from the truth. It all just depends on your ability to allow Pluto to do his job in the fifth house, right? So if we want to go back to your youth, right? With Pluto ruling the deepest parts of your psychology, right? You likely have some type of possibly trauma or wound related to this area of your life. So more than likely, you may have felt as if you were unable to express yourself creatively when you were young. However you want to express yourself, there's like some type of blockage, probably another person, possibly your parents or the people in your environment blocking you from doing that. So let's say you were a girl who was a bit of a tomboy, right? And you want to express yourself in that specific way. You want to hang with the boys and do boyish things, but your parents were telling you that was wrong, vice versa as well. Same thing could happen in reverse as a male, you know, you're a little boy, but you may be on the more feminine side and you were told that was wrong. So you have to suppress that side of yourself and express yourself in a way that wasn't really congruent with who you truly were. It doesn't even necessarily have to be some type of, gender reversal, role reversal. I'm just using that as an example. You might have been a boy that was hyper masculine. You were told that was wrong, so you suppressed it. Or you were a girl that was hyper feminine. You were told that was wrong, you suppressed it. Or you may have been into things like drawing and drawing anime characters, for example. And the people around you could have been telling you that was it was lame or weird or it wasn't right to just whatever. That's going to leave a deep mark within your psyche that is going to have a bit of control over your life until you learn how to take back that control over that area of your life, right? You may have also either been restricted from having fun or indulging in any type of pleasures, or if you were able to do so, there may have always been some type of dark undercurrent revolving around these activities. You know, whether you're doing these things with shady people, you're hanging out with your buddies at this camping trip, but they have this weird uncle that's creeping everybody out, or there's always some type of just crazy event that happens whenever y'all are having fun, or you may have been exposed to fun and pleasurable things in a way that wasn't appropriate for you to discover at a young age. You may have been you know you may have witnessed weird sexual things that happen between the other children or even between you and other children. You may have went through these type of things at a young age, and they all leave a mark on your psyche. So, due to this deep, you know, psychological wound, not even necessarily a wound, but just this deep, embedded psychological issue within you, it can lead to one of two things, or it can lead to many things. But there's typically two expressions of this energy. So when you get older, you may just have this, just unsatiable urge to always be able to express yourself freely and creatively in whatever ways that you feel like doing it. You might be a bit impulsive with this energy, or you may completely shut yourself off from this side of your life in the fifth house, in regards to creative expression and fun and pleasure. You know, regardless, it's going to lead to you going through certain situations and deep transformations regarding how you deal with that power that you have in the fifth house. So, for example, let's say that you weren't allowed to express yourself the way you wanted to in regards to the way that you dressed when you were younger. You know, well, once you get the freedom to do so, you're likely going to you're going to dress in a very provocative way, or you may dress in a way that is extremely covered up and just not really authentic to yourself. Either way, neither sides of these extremes are necessarily authentic to you. It's just you overcompensating for things you weren't allowed to do and express when you were younger. So, what's going to happen is this: Pluto will put you in situations where you're going to go through like a tower moment, if you're familiar with tarot, where you'll go through a sudden realization or sudden turn of events that makes you question if what you were doing was actually the right thing. It's going to force you to change course. So I'm going to use an example. Let's say you are creating YouTube videos. You weren't allowed to make YouTube videos when you were younger. Now you're making YouTube videos, right? But these YouTube videos you're making have nothing to do with what it is you actually want to express creatively. It has nothing to do with your actual purpose. You're just making them just to make them, you know. And one of two things are going to happen. Either you're going to make zero progress and you're going to want to quit, or you may make progress, but something may happen that destroys that progress. Either way, these situations are meant for you to reevaluate the way you were expressing yourself creatively and then rebuild in the direction you're meant to go towards. See, Pluto's going to always try to keep you in alignment, but if you are out of alignment, it's going to force you to see how and why you were out of alignment so you can see where your true power lies. See, before, you wanted to express your power by just making the videos, but that wasn't how you were meant to express that energy. It was meant for you to make those videos in a way that actually aligns with your purpose, about things that you genuinely and passionately want to put out into the world. Or you might not even been meant to even been doing that in the first place, but because you weren't allowed to express that when you were younger, you just want to do it just to do it. And that's something that Pluto in the fifth house has a tendency to do. They just want to do things just to do it because they couldn't do it when they were younger. They want to express themselves in certain ways because they couldn't express themselves that way when they were younger, but it might not even been authentic to themselves. So it's really a lesson of you learning how to use your creative power constructively and authentically, because anything that's not authentic, Pluto will not allow to exist. It just won't. So if you start projects in an inauthentic way around inauthentic people for selfish means and egotistical means, you will lose it every single time. You will not make progress, right? So with the fifth house also ruling, your inner child, the expression of your inner child, like I said, there's a wound already there from when you were younger, from when you were a child, right? And you become ferocious about protecting your inner child. At least you should, because any wounds and damage to the inner child directly affects your ability to express yourself on a creative level. So if you're putting yourself in situations that cause you to go through unnecessary trauma and burdens, it's going to have an effect on your ability to be able to create from an authentic level, because you're putting trauma, you're adding trauma to the mix, and trauma always has a negative effect on your creative expression. Well, not always. You can you can transmute that. I mean, that is part of what Pluto and Scorpio as well does. You know, you can transmute that pain into gains, but it's just the unnecessary trauma that will mess you up in the long run. You know, so this is all going to come full circle. So with the fifth house ruling casual acquaintances, right? Let's say you have these friends that you're hanging out with, right? Pluto wants depth and intimacy. Fifth house wants fun, right? When you were younger, for example, let's say you weren't allowed to have fun and hang out with your friends. So now that you can hang out with friends and do stuff, yeah, freedom, you just hanging out with any and every old body. You know, you end up in situations that you shouldn't be in because you neglected Pluto. You neglected the depth and intimacy. You just want to have fun. So you're just hanging around people that you can't really even trust. So you always end up in situations where things always go south. And even if nothing crazy happens, you just being around them always leads to some type of downfall in the areas of your life that actually matter. So you might go out with people that you don't even really even need to be about and don't really even be around or care about, and you're drinking and having fun and doing all of these different things, and then you know the next day you wake up and you perform very poorly at work, or at least or some of the things you did lead to issues within your relationship, or you wake up broke because you blew all your money on just alcohol or just dumb stuff, or you could have been spending that time on something productive, expressing creative energy in a positive manner, but instead you just wasted all that time and now you're behind even more on your projects. That's what Pluto's going to put you through when you have Pluto in the fifth house. It's going to keep putting you through these situations where, you know, you thought you were expressing your power in the way you needed and wanted it to, but Pluto's going to show you that you actually were not. And you were doing the opposite of what you were meant to be doing. So now the things you really care about and really want to work towards and nurture, you can't nurture those things because you keep giving your power away to things that have nothing to do with your actual purpose in life. You're just wasting time. You know, with Pluto in the fifth house, you don't really have the luxury of just having fun just to have fun or pleasure just to have pleasure, because it's not within you to actually do that. You may think it is because you weren't allowed to before. So now you just want to have fun by any means necessary, have pleasure by any means necessary, but it's always going to come back and bite you in the ass. It's never going to work out the way you want it to until you learn how to be authentic and surround yourself with authentic people and do authentic things and express yourself in authentic ways. Then the pleasure and the fun comes and the fulfillment comes. But until then, you will continue to go through these situations and cycles, and your creative expression will be affected in a negative way, right? Another example with the fifth house ruling dating, the beginnings of relationships, casual sexual relationships, and Pluto being there, what this can lead to is a lot of power struggles when it comes to the dating stage, right? So since Pluto wants depth and intimacy, it wants to skip the whole dating stage and go straight to the seventh and eighth house, which is committed relationships, shared resources, and intimacy. But if you are not aware of that aware of that side of yourself, because you were deprived of being able to date or have casual relationships, once you get the freedom to do so, you're going to go around here doing all of the things that are not in alignment with you. So you're going to be dating people that you shouldn't be dating people who aren't serious, trying to have casual sex, trying to have casual relationships, trying to have friends with benefits. But that's not really even true to who you are with Pluto in the fifth house. You can't have casual things with Pluto in the fifth house. Like, there's no such thing as casual friends, casual lovers, anything of that nature. You will never be fulfilled. For someone like you, that's like eating candy instead of fruit. It's going to taste good in the moment, but you're going to feel like crap afterwards, especially if you have to do something like engage in physical activity. This is an analogy. Who's going to do better as an athlete, or who's going to do better as an athlete? The person who eats a bunch of candy or the person who eats a bunch of fruit? The person who eats a bunch of fruit. So it's the same thing in this analogy. If you have Pluto in the fifth house, who's going to be more fulfilled? A person with Pluto in the fifth who has a bunch of casual acquaintances, or a person with Pluto in the fifth who has a bunch of real connections when it comes down to, real intimacy. You can't get intimate with people who you're casual with, so you won't feel fulfilled. Whereas if you are in a very close, intimate connection with an individual, you will feel fulfilled, right? However, if you don't honor that, you're going to traumatize yourself. You're going to keep getting put through unnecessary baggage and trauma, and this will negatively impact your ability to access that creative energy, right? Your creative energy is also tied to your sexual energy. So if you are wasting your sexual energy on pornography or casual sex, it will directly impact your ability to access your creative energy. This is where your power is. So you have to maintain this power and build up this power. Otherwise, you will always feel unfulfilled and just down about life. You'll always be going through, unnecessary trauma and baggage, right? With the fifth house also ruling children, children are going to play a major key role in regards to your expression of your inner child and your creativity, because children are naturally connected to their creative selves and their inner child. The innocence of a child, they naturally just want to have fun, express themselves freely, and just be creative. So working with children, being around children, you know, whether they're your own children or other children, you know, is going to be very vital for someone with Pluto in the fifth house. It'll give you access to that creative expression that you may have lost as a child, and it will connect you with your true, authentic self. Being around children will, in a way, be healing to you. So even if you don't have children, even if you're a godmother or a godfather or stepfather, stepmother, or you just take care of, your friends' children, or you may have younger siblings. Like either way, it's healing. It's very healing to you. So that's something to take into consideration. Um, the fifth house also rules gambling, setting gains from the cryptocurrency and stock market. So if you express that energy in a positive way, you could be a very, very good investor and make large sums of money, especially if you have Pluto in Sagittarius, because Sagittarius naturally wants to expand and Pluto goes to extremes. So if you are good with risk management, but you're also are not risk averse, you're not scared to take risk. If you have Pluto and Sagittarius in the fifth house, you have potential to make large sums of money there. On the flip side, you also have potential to lose large sums of money if you're not careful and diligent. If you're expressing that energy in a negative way, you know, you're just going about just to make a quick buck. You're essentially gambling, and you're going to lose that money. That's you using that Pluto in the fifth house in a negative way. You might not have been able to do that at some point in your life, so now you just want to go out there and just hop into it, and you end up in bad situations in regards to finances and money. The fifth house also represents sports, so you likely were very good at sports as a child, even if you didn't play any type of sports. um, you know, you would naturally pick up on the skills necessary to become a good athlete. It's not necessarily always sports; it's really just games in general. So you could have been someone that played a lot of video games or just games in general, and you are just naturally talented at it. You're very good at it because you're able to see beneath the surface and learn all the skills at a deep level necessary to be good at that. So that's something to take into consideration for yourself, as well as if you have a child with Pluto in the fifth house. So that basically sums up this video. Um, Again, it is imperative that if you have Pluto in the fifth house, that you learn to own your creative expression, and not to give that power away by indulging in unnecessary vices and using your creative energy to express yourself in ways that aren't in alignment with who you are, because you will never succeed with Pluto in the fifth house if you do this to yourself. It's also imperative that you don't get yourself in unnecessary power struggles with friends and acquaintances that are looking to abuse you and use you because you're not hanging around authentic people. Um, Lovers, friends with benefits and casual relationships, you should stay away from that because that's not authentic to you. So it will always lead to power struggles where, the two people are looking to control each other, but they're never on the same level or on the same page. There's jealousy and just unnecessary, just baggage involved because it's not a true intimate deep connection. It's a casual, superficial connection that you're trying to make deeper than what it is. Same goes with the friends. You're not pleased with these friends because you're not forming deep connections with these people. Your fun and your pleasure needs to be taken serious. Needs to be with people that are in alignment with you, people that are actually looking to grow with you. And this will in turn allow you to express yourself in the most authentic way possible. Authenticity is key, and being real with yourself is key. So anytime you have things stripped from you, or you go through any type of disillusionment in these areas of life, understand that it's for the better, it's for the good. It's so that you can align yourself with your destiny and attract what's actually meant to come to you. So that's the end of this video. If you have any comments, questions, leave them in the comments section. If you want a reading, I will leave my contact information in the description. And